Hello, and welcome to another chapter of Mike Financial Education. Today, we are going to talk about the history of money. In the beginning, before money was invented, humans engaged in barter trade. Barter means that you bring one product to a person in exchange for another product they have. For example, if I have chickens and I want a sheep, I need to find a person who owns sheep and ask him to make a deal. He will receive chickens in exchange for their sheep. Barter trade has several disadvantages. The first disadvantage is that it was very difficult to price products in the form of barter. For example, if I want to buy sheep, how can I know how many chickens it is worth? It could be that for one person it's worth 5 chickens, and for another person it's worth 12 chickens. The second disadvantage is that if I don't have a product that the other party wants, I need to find a third person to close the deal. For example, if I want to buy an axe in exchange for 3 sheep that I have, I approach a person who has an axe, offer them the deal, and they tell me they're not interested in sheep at all, but they are willing to make a deal with me if I give them nails. If I want to complete the transaction, I'll need to find a third person who would be willing to give me nails in exchange for my sheep. If that person agrees, that's excellent, but if not, I will need to continue looking for another person. And this can be a huge difficulty in trading. People understood that this method wasn't very good, and they looked for a solution. They found a new method and started working with it. In this method, they essentially invented money. But this money wasn't exactly like the money we know. The first money that humans worked with was various objects from their environment. Humans gave them value by believing that these objects had a certain value. For example, if I live in a certain village located near the sea, I can use seashells as money, provided that all the people in my area and village are willing to recognize the seashell as something of value. It's clear to all village residents that the seashell itself isn't worth anything, but if everyone is willing to accept the seashell as a trading option, it will have value. Why? Because if I can buy and sell using seashells, then they have value. You could say that during this period, there were dozens or even hundreds of different types of money. For example, shells, stones, various types of metals, and more. A very well-known example of money from this period is salt, which served one of the largest empires in the world as a type of currency. The Roman Empire paid its soldiers salaries using salt, and this still affects our language today. For instance, the word salary in English comes from the word salt. Also, the word soldier in English comes from the word salt. Money in this form certainly had advantages over barter trade since it was more convenient for commerce, but it also had disadvantages. The first disadvantage was that sometimes it was very easy to produce money because it was essentially made of common materials from the environment. If, for example, we use shells as money and suddenly there's a big flood, the number of shells can increase many times over. When it's easy to produce money in large quantities, it loses its value and therefore isn't a stable currency, which can collapse the economy. This can be compared to a situation where every person can print money at home. The second disadvantage is that not all communities worked with the same money, and this often created an inability for different groups to trade with each other. For example, if there are 2 villages, in the first one they use stones as money, and in the second one they use shells as money. If a person from the first village comes to the second village to buy a sheep and wants to pay with stones, the people of the second village will not accept the payment. Why? Because from their perspective, stones have no monetary value. The third disadvantage is that when buying products and goods in large quantities, it's very difficult to transfer the different types of money from place to place. For example, if a certain community of people wants to buy plenty of products from another distant community, they will need to transfer a large amount of money to them. Think, for instance, about a village that needs to transfer 50 kilograms of salt to another village 50 kilometers away. This journey is both difficult and dangerous because the salt can be spilled in certain cases. After humans understood that this solution wasn't perfect, they moved to a new method, which is coins. The main advantage of this method was that the money was much more stable. its stability stemmed from two main factors. The first factor was that those who signed off on the coins were usually the king, so counterfeiting coins was considered a serious offense. If you were caught counterfeiting money, there was a high chance that you would die, so the amount of counterfeiting was relatively low. This meant that the amount of money in the market was controlled. The second reason is that it's physically much harder to counterfeit a coin than to find shells or stones. So the amount of money in the market remained much more stable. Humans worked with coins for a very long time, and even today we use coins to a limited extent. But there were also problems with this method. The main problem is that coins are made of metals, so it's very difficult to carry large amounts of them for trade. Try to imagine a situation where you need to buy a house or a car using coins. You would need to carry kilograms of various metals to complete the transaction. After humans understood that there was also a problem with coins, they moved to a new method called banknotes. Banknotes are papers with numbers that represent the amount of money they're worth. Paper, unlike precious metals, was light, so it was much easier to complete large transactions between parties. But here too, the solution wasn't perfect. Because if there's a transaction involving enormous sums of money, for example, a transaction of $100 million, it would be difficult for us to carry and count so many banknotes. In addition, paper is a weak material and can be destroyed by water and torn. So holding large sums of money in paper can create serious problems. For example, imagine a situation where a person keeps a sum of $100,000 in paper banknotes at home, and there's moisture in the house or a fire. After banknotes, humans invented a new solution called virtual money. Virtual money is the most common type of money that exists in the world today. The physical money in use today constitutes a very small part of the global economy, and it can be said that cash is disappearing from the world. The advantage of virtual money is that it cannot be physically damaged, unlike banknotes and coins. And in addition, the transfer of money requires no effort. Enormous sums of billions of dollars can be transferred within seconds, allowing global trade at a level that has never existed in human history. I hope you enjoyed. And of course, we will meet again in future videos.